Welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How you doing? Do you have any questions that pop into your head immediately before we get started on contracts? Contract questions?
This is Heidi. I take the test tomorrow, so I'm just here for whatever is there.
Okay. You know, I'm glad you're here because what we're going to be talking about tonight, you will shortly revisit.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, this is good stuff. This is good stuff tonight. Dan has put together a whole slew of stellar questions. I just was really impressed going through them.
Okay, sounds good. I have to be out in about an hour, so
Well,
sorry.
yeah, that's all we go. We go.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started then. Okay, Dan? All right, so we're going to look at the first question, number one, and it says, here we go. Okay, if a real estate purchase contract is signed by both parties, but the buyer finds that the contract does not accurately represent the property, the contract is executed, automatically voided, unilateral, and voidable by the buyer. Okay, executed means it's all finished. It was put up against the wall and shot. It's all done. You know, it was like it went under contract. You went to closing, you finished it all out. Automatically voided. Does anything happen automatically very often? Probably not. So I wouldn't pick any one of those two. Unilateral, bilateral, you know, those are great terms. You need to know what they mean. Uni, of course, means one. Bi means two. But look at D, voidable by the buyer. Voidable by the buyer. Now, if you look back up at the stem of the question, it says if a real estate purchase contract signed by both parties, but the buyer, so we're focused in on the buyer, that's probably the best hint that D is the correct answer, and it is the correct answer. So it is voidable by the buyer. And why? Because it did not accurately represent the property. So what happens is if you have a situation where there are provisions in the contract that are inaccurate, and it's voidable by the person that was disadvantaged. Okay, and so that would be the buyer. You know, maybe it had a wrong legal description or an address that was incorrect, or in some way it didn't really describe the property adequately. So it'd be voidable by the buyer. The buyer could say, our contract is bogus, man, because it doesn't really describe the property I'm buying. Okay, it was wrong. It wasn't what we call prima facie. Prima facie meaning it stands on its own weight because there was a mistake made. It wasn't accurate. Okay, number two, please. A person cannot sign legal documents in another person's name unless they A, have power of attorney, B, are married. I paused on that. C, have verbal permission. D, are a lawyer. Oh yeah, if you're a lawyer, you can sign for anybody, right? No. Being married has nothing to do with anything. Verbal permission won't stand up. I mean, you know, we have a statute of frauds, remember, that says all contracts must be what? Written. So either you're a lawyer and that's okay, or you have power of attorney. What do you guys think? Heidi, what do you think?
It's A, have power of attorney.
That is exactly right. Power of attorney is a separate document that gives someone the authority to sign for you. It needs to be notarized and it needs to be very specific. It can be kind of general in nature, but it needs to be specific enough to where the other parties involved are comfortable with it. Now, signing something as a buyer in a transaction with a power of attorney is very difficult. There are situations where that can be done, particularly if someone is a service member, maybe they're stationed overseas. But you know, electronic signatures are so much more popular with the lenders now than a power of attorney. Signing with a power of attorney on the seller side is much easier because we're not entering into a loan that's going to be, you know, going forward in the future. You know, you're just selling the property and you're out of it, you know. And so the correct answer to this one is have a power of attorney. You were correct. Number three, a real estate sales contract must have a third-party lender. Must have a third-party lender? No. B, a property description. That sounds pretty good. C, a bill of sale. Bill of sales are for personal property. This is a real estate contract, so throw that one out. But does every real estate sales contract have to have a mortgage? What about people who pay cash? So obviously the correct answer to this one is, what do you think, guys? B, property description. You must describe what you're trying to, what the property is that you're buying or you're contracting for. Third party lender, no. Bill of sale, personal property, mortgage. Well, there's a lot of cash deals out there, particularly these days. So that is the best answer, a property description. Okay, let's look at number 4, please. If a lessor and a lessee come to terms on a lease. Now, the ors and es are important, okay? We have mortgagor, mortgagee. Mortgage or is the borrower. Mortgagee is the lender, okay? Grantor is the giver of the deed. That would be like a seller. And a grantee would be like the buyer. Well, a lessor is the person that had the keys. They're the person who owned the property. I mean, and the lessee is the tenant. They're the one that wants the keys. And so the givers are the OR. So, I guess a tenant could break into a vacant property and, kind of hang out there a bit, and that would be a problem. There'd be a trespasser, but what they want is legitimate right to be there and have possession of that property. And so you enter into a lease. And so the lessee is the renter and the lessor is the landlord. So if a landlord and a renter come to terms on a lease for an apartment, but after the agreement is signed, it's revealed that the lessee, that's the renter, is only 16 years old. I mean, some 16-year-olds look pretty dang old, so which is true? A, the lessee, that's the tenant, can void the contract. B, the lessor, the landlord, can void the contract. Out of those two, which one lacks capacity? The landlord, we assume that they're of age and they have capacity. The only thing we know for sure from this question is that the lessee, the tenant, didn't have capacity. So far, A has got a star on that one. C, the contract is automatically voided. And once again, things don't happen very often automatically. D, the contract is activated. What the heck? What's that mean? Plugged in? I don't know. So guys, the answer, of course, would be the lessee can void the contract because they lack capacity. And the contract is voidable. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to. I mean, maybe this kid did really well with cryptos. He bought Bitcoin at 3 cents a coin and he understood it, and so what happens is maybe he's paying cash. The problem is not getting the property into the 16-year-old's name, assuming that he had the capacity to buy he didn't have the capacity to contract, but assuming he had the wherewithal to buy the property, he could buy the property. Getting it into his name wouldn't be a problem. Getting it out of his name before he turns 18 would be a huge problem. Or borrowing money or trying to do anything with the property, sign a rental agreement or whatever. It's very cumbersome. So he would have to go back to court and have someone put in charge of that did have capacity. Let's go to 5, please. Let's talk about 3 things that a valid contract for land requires. Okay, 3 things a valid contract for land requires. Now, would it make any difference if it's for land or for an improved property? Probably not, but let's just look at our answers. A broker? No, I'd throw that one out just because, we have for sale by owners that happen all the time. A broker, an expiration in consideration? Well, no. B, consideration, offer and acceptance, and competent parties. Ooh, that one feels warm and fuzzy. Let's stick with that one. I'm down in St. George, so everything's warm and fuzzy down here. C, competent parties, tax provisions, tax provisions. Forget about that one. D, a legal description of land, a broker. Where's that broker thing again? Well, if A is wrong, then D is probably wrong too. So that leaves either B or C. And of course, we know it's B. Consideration, offer and acceptance, and competent parties. Okay, cool. Got it? Questions on that? Pretty basic, but these questions, these first 5 we've gone through, Heidi, you're going to see some of these again soon. like tomorrow. Let's go to
Like
6. Let's go to 6, please. Okay, according to the statute of frauds. Now, statute of frauds is one of those uniform statutes. It's very similar in most states. I mean, a lot of people buy real estate across state lines. You know, people own properties all over the country and whatnot. I mean, you know, I got property in Colorado, Arizona, you know, Utah, you know, so anyway, so it's nice that we have a uniform statute that's pretty much similar in all those states. Okay. And another one is a uniform commercial code. And, you know, but according to statute of frauds, this is a uniform statute, a real estate sales contract must be oral. yeah, right. Exactly opposite. You know, look at C in writing. Ah, that one sounds really good. Enforceable. It's only enforceable if all the if it is written, and that's the main one, but it also has the other aspects of a legal contract, like competent parties, signed by only one party. Well, obviously that's not good. So the correct answer to this one is in writing, because that's what the statute of frauds primarily does. I mean, the statute of frauds talks about that real estate type contracts, whether they be for sale or for lease, or not necessarily for lease entirely, but I mean they're so important that in order to be enforceable in a court of law, they must be what? In writing. Okay. So it's not that according to statute of frauds, real estate contracts must be enforceable. No, they have to be written, so they could be enforceable. Let's go to 7, please. A verbal real estate sales contract is, well, hey, I already gave it away. A, unenforceable. And they're not common. Well, you know, I mean, they shouldn't be because they're unenforceable. It leads to all kinds of problems. You can't go before a judge. Judge will throw it out. He says, look, you guys should have put it in writing. So common, no. Written, it says it's verbal. Hello? Executed, put up against the wall and shot. Now, guys, obviously this one is what? Number 7 is unenforceable because it's not what? Statute of frauds says it has to be written to be enforceable. Let's go to 8. That is a very common question, Heidi. You know, and you saw a couple of variations there, so that'll be very helpful to you. Number 8, who must sign an agreement to sell property? Who must sign an agreement to sell property? Okay, A, all the owners of the property. B, the owner with the largest share. Well, you know, majority rules, right? C, the owner's agent. Okay, the owner's heirs. Well, okay. The only one that must sign is obviously A, all the owners. And I don't care if there's 9 owners. So I just did a deal a while back. They had 9 owners, and one lady, you know, she just, well, yeah, I was going to take that down and send that UPS, but I didn't. And she lived in Laverkin. Yeah. Anyway, one of those little towns. I says, ma'am, have you signed the contract? She says, yes, I've signed it. It says, okay, I'm driving down to get it. Okay. You're holding up the deal. We need that signature. There were 9 owners and she's the only holdout. So she agreed to sign it, and she left it in an envelope by her front door because she had to go somewhere. She's busy. You know, well, I understand. Well, I drove down there. She said, oh man, she had a gorgeous home. It was beautiful. And she's one of those ladies who had great influence in her small community. Let's go to number 9, please. Okay. A and B are married. Oh, how nice. And they're selling their vacation home that they purchased together. They have signed a purchase agreement. So they're selling it, right? So they're signed it as sellers, right? And it's time to close on the property. Okay, who needs to go to the closing and sign this deed, deeding it to the new owner? Well, A, the broker can sign for them. No. I mean, that's in a lot of ways, that's a conflict of interest. I mean, let me see. If I sign this deed, I make a commission. If I don't sign the deed, I don't make a commission. So, it's conflict of interest. Be the title agent. Yeah, they can sign everything, right? No, they're a neutral third party and they can't sign, they do sign several documents saying when they witnessed things or they prepared things or and that sort of thing. And usually they're the notary, but no, they can't sign. A and B both must sign. Ooh, that sounds great. Either A or B can sign. Obviously, it's C. I mean, I told you I had 9 owners and had to drive down and collect one signature, 2.5 hours down, 2.5 hours back. It's okay. It's a big deal. 1.7 million. Okay, let's look at number 10, please. An agreement to purchase property is agreement between. An agreement to purchase property is an agreement between the buyer and his agent. No. The buyer and the seller. Ooh, that sounds good. The seller and his agent. No. The agents of the buyer and seller. No. Obviously, it's the seller and no, it's the buyer and seller, of course. Okay, it is B, the buyer and seller. Okay. And once again, if there's 9 people, they've all got to sign, correct? Correct. Even though they have a very minority interest, yes, yes. And it gets real interesting with, because out of 9 people, chances are someone's getting divorced, someone's getting married, someone died. It can get real dicey, when you have all these large groups that are multiple owners. Let's go to 11, please. Broker R received an offer on a listing from buyer A. Ooh, I love it when you get offers. He presents the offer to the seller who says, yeah, this is great. I'm going to sign this, and they accept it. After broker R informs buyer A, hey, your deal was accepted, who is legally bound? Okay. In order for a contract to be binding, it was not it was an offer. And the seller said, oh, this is great. I'll sign it. So it was accepted, but acceptance includes communication. It must be communicated back to the other party that, hey, you got a deal. This is exciting. And that's exactly what I tell them. I call them up and say, oh, congratulations, you got it. I mean, I don't even say hello because they say, hello, hi, it's Rick. Well, Rick, we want to rescind our offer. They could rescind their offer before you told them it was accepted. So you got to be quick. I know it's theatrical, but it helps you remember it for the test. Okay, so 11. The answer, yeah, we're doing 11. Okay, so no, we did this. Yeah, well, wait a minute. Number 11. Yeah, everyone. Okay, broker R receives an offer on a listing from buyer. He represents the seller who accepts it, and after broker informs the buyer is legally bound. Everyone is, because now they're all bound. Okay, no one, the seller or the buyer. Okay, because I need to chew on this aloe vera plant, but I think it's plastic. Okay, all right, next one, please. Number 12. Okay, J and K are joint tenants. Okay, in Utah, you could own property as joint tenants. You can own it as tenants, and if it's a joint ownership, you could own it as tenants in common, or you could own it by tenancy by entirety, which is like joint tenants for married people. But number 12 says they are joint tenants, which is very common. And normally what happens is, and this may not be in the best interest of J and K because we don't know their background, but the lender's the one that decides that, they're going to own it as joint tenants. That may not be the best situation for them, but that's what happens most of the time. So J and K are joint tenants and are listing their property with an agent. Okay. K, that's one of the owners, is out of town when J meets the agent to sign the listing agreement, which is true. J cannot complete the listing agreement without K's signature. I mean, we've been hammering that for the last 4 minutes, right? So that sounds really good. B, J can sign the listing agreement and begin the process of selling the home. No, I mean, J could sign the listing agreement, but it's not a valid listing until it's signed by what? All the owners. So you really can't start your marketing process because you don't have a binding contract. No signatures needed to list a property with an agent. No, that's not true. As joint tenants, they cannot list their property with an agent. That's foolish. Of course they can. So the correct answer to number 12 is A. J cannot complete the listing agreement without K's signature. 9 owners, 9 signatures. 2 owners, in this case, you need both six signatures. Hey, if my arm is not hurt, I just had some, I had an accident where a lady T-boned me in an intersection, and my orthopedic surgeon had to put some metal in here to hold a bone all together while it healed. This was about 6 years ago. Anyway, it was bothering me, so I went back to him and said, take this metal out, because it's just, and that's what this is all about. So no big deal. All right, that's probably more than you wanted to know. Let's look at 13, please. P is selling a property to G. PG, okay. And they are each represented by agents. Cool. They have a purchase agreement, but G wants to make some changes. Now, who's G? G is the buyer. C is selling a property to G. Okay, so G is the buyer and he wants to make some changes. The agents negotiate all the details. That's usually, can happen. Well, go ahead and try to get this and try to get that. So they got it all negotiated. P agrees. They drop an addendum to the contract, changing all these details. And who needs to sign the addendum? Who signs a purchase contract? Well, P and G. But is it both P and G and their agents, or just the agents? G and his agent, or P and G? Obviously, guys, the answer is P and G. Agents don't sign purchase agreements. I mean, we do sign buyer's agreements and listing contracts, but not purchase agreements. Okay. So P and G. Number 14. Okay, we have a contract for the sale of a property is valid is not valid unless it has both what? Offer and acceptance. I like that. Signatures from the agents. What kind of contract is this? Contract for sale. A purchase contract. Nope. Title and deed. Title is something abstract. You can't touch that. You can't touch it. A deed is a piece of paper that transfers this intangible concept of ownership called title. And they're both important, but they have nothing to do with the valid contract. Buyer and broker. So out of these, we're going to go with A, offer and acceptance, because that's the correct answer. Okay. See, all contracts have to have the essential elements of a contract, and you should know what those are. We have offer and acceptance, right? And the statute of frauds says has to be in writing. That's kind of a fifth one. And then there's 3 others. Do you guys know what it is? Yeah, we'll look at that in just a second. Okay, let's go to 15, please. Contract entered between a principal broker of an office and the sales agents. Now, this is your employment agreement. This is your employment agreement with the contract. But contracts can be bilateral or they could be unilateral. Defeasible, unilateral, or qualified. Okay. Now, out of these terms, we have 2 that are bilateral and unilateral. We have defeasible and we have qualified. Okay. Feasible and qualified, defeasible and qualified, when you see them on the test, are more often than not are just distractors. Defeasible fee is a type of fee that has a condition or a definition to it. Qualified, it's usually just a distractor. So it's either bilateral or unilateral. So this is a contract between a principal broker and an agent. And what happens with these contracts is the broker offers to pay if the agent brings the deal to the table and puts it all together. Okay. So it's similar to paying like a reward on a reward poster. They're not going to pay unless the agent takes the actions necessary to make all this happen. And so the broker promises to pay, but does the agent promise to do anything? Not really, if you read these agreements carefully. So that's a promise only made one direction from the broker to the agent, and not 2 directions. And so that would be a unilateral contract. Okay, they're very common, and that's because it's so common. Well, Heidi, you're going to see it tomorrow. Okay, all right, let's go to 16, please. All right, a sales contract for real estate is signed and closed, and the property transfers from the seller to the buyer. Man, the whole deal is done. And the agent got paid. This is great. Okay. Anyway, the sales contract is what? Executory. Executory means, look, you've got to know some terms. I mean, you got to know like 400 terms. And executory means it's not quite completed yet. There's still some things that have to happen in order to make it happen, to finish. Executed is put up against the wall and shot. It's done with. And that is the correct answer. Express means it was written with words, or put together with words. Okay. Statute of Frauds says those words need to be written. And then competent parties, which is one of the essential elements, right? So we have the offer that was made and accepted and communicated. Okay. And then we have competent parties, right? They have to be 18. Remember, we saw a question on that earlier as well. Okay. And that's 16. Let's look at number 17, please. Contract is binding on both parties is, well, we just talked about unilateral and bilateral. Okay. It's definitely not illegal. My gosh, I mean, that's just crazy. That's not a good answer at all. It's executed means it's all finished. It's binding on both parties. So if it's still binding on both parties, it probably isn't completely finished yet. So it's either unilateral or bilateral, but this is binding on both parties. So it's both parties. That B, it means by, or both parties, right? So it's bilateral. Unilateral is like your employment agreement. The best example of a unilateral contract you'll see on the exam is an option agreement. Now, this is where a buyer wants to buy a property, but he needs time either to check out the zoning, maybe procure some water rights so they could drill a well, and maybe there's little things they have to do to make this happen. Do a feasibility study, raise some money, put together a partnership, all kinds of things. Okay, but you don't want to do all this work unless you know dang well that if it's going to work for you and you get the deal put together, that they actually really will sell it to you. So a lot of times what will happen is a purchaser who doesn't want to buy a $500,000 or a $2 or $3 or $6 million piece of property unless they know they can put the deal together and that it will meet all their criteria in order to make this deal work. So they'll pay for an option. They will buy an option, and an option needs to be very specific. It is a unilateral contract because seller must sell, but buyer doesn't have to buy. They have an option to buy or not to buy. Now, if they don't buy, of course, usually they forfeit their option money. The option money is like a free look-see, only it's not free. I'll give you $50,000 for a 1-year option, and here are our terms. It must be clear and specific on the terms. And so they all enter into it. Seller gets the money. Usually they get it right up front, and because they're buying an option. And sometimes that option money will apply to the purchase price. Usually it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Well, if you want to buy it, then you got to pay for it. When you're ready to buy it. This 1-year look-see, that was where the 50 grand went. Okay, but that's all clearly defined in the agreement. Usually they try to apply, of course, what they're putting up for the option against the purchase price. That just makes sense. But it's unilateral, because the buyer can walk away anytime they want to. So the correct answer, obviously, for this one, number 17, it is bilateral. Yeah, I was illustrating unilateral with the option. Okay, the best example of an executed option or an executed contract, backup, would be the one like we looked at earlier, where it's all completed, and they even transfer the ownership. And remember, I joked and said the buyer got paid. The seller, wow, the agent got paid. Okay, and it's certainly not illegal. Let's look at number 18, please. Okay, a mortgage instrument is executed by mortgage instrument, a loan. Okay, who has to agree that their property could be encumbered by a lender? Could a lender call someone up and say, Mr. Smithers, hi, this is Rick at First National Bank. Congratulations, we just took out a big loan on your property, and just come on down to the bank. You're going to love the rate, 7%, and we've got $500,000 for you, and we'll be happy to set up an account, and you can spend the money whatever you want. No, the only person that can hypothecate or encumber your property is you, the owner. Okay, so it's not the owner's agent that signs the loan document. It's not the lending institution that signs the loan document. It's not the owner's heir that signs the loan document. Obviously, it is the what? The owner. Okay. And you're the only one that can hypothecate your property. So does that make you the or the e? Remember, the ORs are the give-ors. So a mortgage or would be the owner. Or would they be the mortgagee? Okay. The receiver. Okay. Nope. Mortgage or. Now, in a trust deed, we have three parties. We have a trustor, and we have a beneficiary, and we have a trust. Did I say trustee? Anyway, we have three parties. Okay. And what happens is the trustee holds the bet, between the borrower and the lender. And it's kind of a little different, because a mortgage has to be foreclosed in a court of law. It has to be adjudicated in most states. Now, Utah you could have either a mortgage or you could have a trust deed. Okay. And even though we call all our lenders mortgage lenders, did you go to the mortgage company? None of them do mortgages, because none of them want to go to court if they're not being paid their payments. They want to just do what's called an administrative foreclosure, which is the type of foreclosure you do under a trust deed. The problem with the mortgage is you're in front of a judge, and judges rule what they want to rule. And sometimes the banks are not very happy with how the judge feels about things, or they're having a bad hair day. They don't even take that risk. So trustee, you're not foreclosing in a court of law. It's administrative foreclosure. And that's handled by the trustee, the one that's holding the bet. So what happens in a trustee to begin with in Utah are title companies. Now, some states have a public trustee, and it's kind of like an office. Usually it's the recorder for the county. And so the recorder kind of holds the bets for everybody in the county, and they are the public trustee. But Utah uses a private trustee system. And so it's a title company. So what happens is, when someone goes delinquent on their trustee, their loan, the bank will call their lawyer, and they'll say, look, we're going to have to foreclose on Smithers. They're just not making their payments. So lawyer says, okay, I'll get right on it. The first thing that the lawyer does is they pull documents from the public record. Usually they have their own favorite title company that does that for them. And then they find out who the trustee is. Oh, the trustee is First Liberty Title or something. Okay. So they fill out a form called the substitution of trusteeship that they take over to that title company. And of course they sign it because, they're not getting paid to be the trustee or anything anyway. They're just doing it as an accommodation. So the new trustee becomes the bank's lawyer. Not exactly arm's length, is it? And so the lawyers have very specific rules that they have to follow in order to complete that foreclosure. And it takes about 4 months or so. Sometimes take a little longer, probably not much quicker in our state. And so what happens is the mortgage it's not really a mortgage, it's a trust deed, and it's foreclosed and it's handled by the bank. And they usually have, it's a verbal outcry auction. They usually do it in a public place like the south steps of the courthouse and whatever. And people come or they don't. Sometimes, people don't come and the bank is the highest bidder. And sometimes people show up, but the bank's still the highest bidder because the bank's going to bid usually the balance on your loan and maybe a little bit more sometimes. But what happens is they end up with a trustee's deed and, signed by their signed by their lawyer. Okay. And then they record that. And so what happens in, thank you. What happens in some states like our neighbors to the east and north of Wyoming is that Wyoming is a all mortgage state. So they're all mortgages, but they have a clearly defined mechanism for foreclosure in Wyoming. And so, it's not as cumbersome as taking everything to court. So they vary from one state to another, but an mortgage instrument, the only person that can hypothecate your property is you. And that is the owner. Okay. Assuming you're the owner. Okay. Let's look at 19, please. In selling a home, the sellers are willing to let the buyers take over their existing loan. Now, this is an interesting thing. Earlier, I was talking to a young man who walked through here at this hotel where I'm staying down in St. George. I'll be teaching at the St. George Board of Realtors tomorrow. And when he found out I was going to do a real estate class, he got all excited. He wants to get into real estate. So, but he said, but what I want to know is I want someone to teach me the tricks. I says, what do you mean the tricks? Well, every business has a trick, oh, you mean the shortcuts or how to actually do it? Because getting a license is one thing, learning all these terms. Heidi, you're going to pass the test tomorrow, and then you can send in your documents and then you'll be licensed. And then you're going to wake up and say, now what do I do? Am I going to make any money in this business? And that's what he meant by the tricks. Anyway, one of the tricks is that we have thousands and thousands of people that have put FHA loans on homes in all across the Wasatch Front and all across the whole state of Utah. And the interesting thing is that those loans are probably 4% and below. I saw a sign the other day where FHA was, my gosh, is 2% or a little bit less. And so what happens is that FHA loans are assumable with credit qualification. Oh, well, Fed's talking about raising rates. So what if rates pop up to 6%, but you want to sell your house and it has a 2% loan on it? And it's fully assumable with credit qualification of your buyer. Is there additional value in your house because you have a very low interest loan? It can be assumed. And FHA cannot bump the interest rate up. Yeah, wow, that's really interesting. That could be a niche. That could be a trick because you can actually get a list of FHA mortgages on homes in the area you want to work in. So if you're in Monticello or, I don't know, you want to work in Levan or you want to work in, wherever you want to work, Provo, you could get a list of people that actually have current FHA loans at various interest rates. And you can assume they're all below 4% probably, maybe 5%, but still if current rates are 6 or 7 or good grief, I've sold homes in markets where they were 12%, which doesn't give you a lot of buying power, but they could probably get another 20, 30, 40, 50 grand. I don't know. It depends on what the market's doing, but they can get more for their property because it has that lower interest rate. And that could be assumed. And that's a trick. So he's gone. He's not hanging out. So he didn't learn that trick, but you can. And it's kind of fun because this week I've been working on niche marketing, and there's about 5 different niches. To be successful in real estate, you need to find a niche and then seek to totally dominate it. Okay. And that would be one, get a list of FHA homes at lower interest rates and market to those people. Look, I'm the kind of agent that can get you more money for your house than anybody else can, because I know how to properly market it, where we can let someone come in and take over your loan. And you can get released of liability. Okay. All right. So the lender agrees to let this loan be assumed. Well, FHA, they have no choice. I mean, they have to credit qualify, but they agree. The seller wants to make sure they have no further liability, okay, for the loan amount. And they could ensure the end of liability with a assignment? No. Fiduciary agreement? No. Fiduciary agreement is, it's like a listing agreement. I mean, you have a fiduciary to your buyers and sellers. Release of lien? No, they're not going to release the lien. You're assuming the loan. A novation. What it is a novation. Novation means substitution of parties with release of liability. Okay. Release of liability. Okay. Questions, anybody?
I'm good.
Okay. Oh, we have a third person now. Luell, right? Luell, is that correct? Okay. Anyway, well, yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Contracts are an essential part of our industry. And that's why I got so excited about these questions tonight. Not only are they very, very important for the test, but my friends, if you want to master this business, you have to master the contracts. And there's only one way to do that. I mean, it comes from experience, but experience can be practiced. Unfortunately in our business, and Dan will agree with this, is that experience is what you get sometimes when you're expecting something else, like a commission, but the deal crashed and burned because you didn't have, the experience to put it together. Well, next time you figured out how to do that. And, but practice, it is imperative that you get a copy of that rep C, Heidi, Blake, and Luell. Before
Yes.
Pardon? How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, Luell.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. I had it close. You need to read the Rep C contract at least 2 or 3 times before you take the test. And Heidi, if you haven't done that yet, you're going to come to a section of the test in the state portion where they're going to ask you specific questions like, what's included with the sale of the home? Or is there a home warranty and who's paying for it? And so don't panic. Tonight, look over the Rep C contract and you'll see that for each section of that contract, there's a header, and that header tells you what that paragraph is all about. Okay, and so there's one that says home warranty on it. Well, so you would flip through the 6 pages till you find the one with that's the right paragraph, and then it will tell you the answer to the question. Really having that contract to look at that's already filled out, and they'll ask you questions about that deal that contract represented, is like giving you a crib sheet. Here's the answer sheet. Here are our 4 or 5 or 3 or 4 questions about this contract, and we just want to know this, this, and that. And so, but you have the answer sheet now, so you could just kind of go through it and find the right things. But what you're going to do is, you're under time constraints, and so if you're not real familiar, like, okay, all those dates, like the deadline dates are on the very last page, and okay, the very first page, that's where we have the terms of the loan and how much they're paying for the house. And oh, the first page is also, it has the inclusions and exclusions. And then, oh, I go back a couple more pages and then here's all of the contingencies. If you're familiar with kind of where they line up on those 6 pages, you'll be less fearful because you'll know you can flip to it quickly. And of course, you won't be handling paper. It'll be on a screen, but you can scroll up and down on the screen and find what you're looking for. And then of course, there's some settlement documents, which they'll ask you specific things like, is there a home warranty and who's paying for it? Well, you look until you find the line item says home warranty, and then is it as a buyer's column or is it in the seller's column? So, they're giving you crib sheets to do the test with. But if you panic and you're not familiar with that familiar with the forms, and which is understandable. You haven't used them that much yet, but then you're going to have to breathe, relax a little bit, and just take it one step at a time. And when you find the answer, be happy with it. Put down A, B, C, or D. There's still all multiple choice. And then forget about it. Go to the next question. Okay. Okay. This is a very interesting time to be getting into real estate. It is. We have had such gains in the market. I mean, like we've never seen before. And the commissions are really big. Yeah. And people are happy with the proceeds. And it's buyers are feeling like they're being skinned a little bit, but they need a place to live. So, that's just what they need to do. I wouldn't be buying a lot of properties if I didn't have to right now, but because I think eventually, we're going to have a more even market where the prices may come down a little bit, particularly if the Fed raises the interest rates, which is what was happening when I first got into business. When I first got into business in the very late 70s, and we started in the early 80s, we were in a inflationary cycle as well. And it wasn't as bad as it is now. I mean, now is worse than it's ever been. They say 7%, but it's really 15% inflation on average. And so and so the Fed started raising interest rates in order to cool down the inflation, and they probably will do it again. Maybe. Okay. And if they do, because they're threatening to do it, and they had a secret meeting yesterday, which I don't know what the results were, but if they start raising it, the 6% rate, you can still sell real estate all day long. 7% rate, you can do it. But as the rates go up, the prices will probably come down a little bit because affordability is lost. And buyers can't afford as much home as they can. They can't get wild and crazy. Although there's a lot of people that have moved into our valley that have come with bundles of cash. And so, they may have paid $1.5 million for the home, but there's only a $600,000 loan on it, so, they put half down or more. And so it's interesting. It's an interesting time to be in the business. It's a lot of fun. We always need good people. And you can, buyer's market, seller's market, doesn't make any difference. It's always a realtor's market. We just take our piece off the top, guys. And you might have to change a little bit how you're working, and you might have to find some of these niche markets like I was referring to earlier, like the FHA loans, and doing assumptions on those. Because that's how, if people have a little bit of dough to buy down to that loan, they're going to be able to get the fantastic interest rate. Even if the interest rates are 6 or 7, they can still pick up that 1.5 or 2.5 or whatever it might be on an existing FHA. They just need to buy it down. But you can also blend loans. You could get a second mortgage. Credit unions will be doing that like crazy, or maybe the seller will actually carry some. All kinds of ways that you can put deals together. But it's going to have to take a real good familiarity with the contracts. You've got to understand all those forms and what they say. I taught a class in Logan a week ago. I had 50 people in the class. We were talking about credit scores and how to fix bad credit. But it was an interesting class because people were complaining that many of the properties that they were selling in the Logan board up there had very small buyer's agent commissions on them, like $500. One of them said that one was $100. Are you going to write all those offers and do all this for $100? And they were complaining, what can we do about that? I said, you can get more familiar with your buyer's agreement, okay, the buyer's listing. Because the buyer's listing has a provision in it that says my commission will be this. And whatever I get from the seller will either fulfill that requirement, or whatever I get from the seller side, like $100 or $500, could partially fulfill that requirement. So you could have that listing contract say that I will get this 2.5%, 5%, 3%, whatever it is, or a fixed dollar amount, $25,000, $10,000, whatever it might be. And then the buyers are already bidding over the list price. I mean, the property is listed for 560, they're offering 595, so a buyer has already got in their head that I might have to pay more for this than what they're asking because of bidding wars, because of the fact that I wrote one up the other day, was 14 offers. Yeah, we didn't get it, but 14 offers came in. Okay. And of course, a lot of those offers were over what the property was actually listed for. So buyers have already got that in their head. I've got to pay more than was listed for. So part of what they pay more of is the rest of your commission. So even if the listing agent is only offering, a pittance for your commission, 5%, $1,500, not 5%, but $500 or $1,500, whatever it might be, you could still get a reasonable commission by pushing the rest of it onto the buyer's agreement. But you have to know how to write it, and you have to know how to explain it, and you have to be familiar with the agreement. Okay. And it's true that in most cases, your commission will be covered by what is being paid for by the seller. But I'm not going to not show a house that would be perfect for my buyers just because the buyer's commission is only $500. I mean, the buyers would skin me alive. This was the perfect house for us, and you didn't even show it to us. Why? Because you weren't going to make enough money? No, I was going to make plenty of money because whatever I got shorted by the seller, you're going to make up the difference anyway, right? So understanding contracts, understanding how they go together, understanding what they really say. Another thing, I wrote up an offer this afternoon before I came down here for one of my sons who wants to buy this $1.2 million property. And we put a provision in it that said that he didn't care about the appraisal. Okay. So he waived the appraisal contingency. Okay. But he didn't waive the financing contingency. Financing contingency says if I'm not happy with the loan, I could cancel the deal and get my earnest money back. Okay. Well, the appraisal contingency says if I'm unhappy with the appraisal, I can cancel the loan and get my money back. But the financing contingency is all you need to cancel the loan. I mean, it could be for no good reason or any reason really. I mean, I had a 2% loan, but I had to put down too much money because the appraisal came in low. So I'm not happy with the loan. So I'm out of this deal. Okay. I wouldn't ever suggest that he explain it to that in that detail. I would just say we're canceling a loan due to the financing condition found in this particular paragraph, period. Okay. But most agents don't understand that. They think if you waive the appraisal portion of that contingency, you waive the other one. That's because they don't understand the contract. They haven't read it. So folks, you want to master this industry. You want to do well. You want to be worth $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year. Master the contracts. It's the most important thing we do in this whole apparatus and procedures that we do. It's not finding the homes anymore. Most buyers are coming to you saying, here's 6 properties I want to look at. They go on realtor.com and find them even without you. And so you make the appointments and you go show them the houses, and that's it. Our role is not just to find the house. Now, sometimes we do find the house, like if you're out working the FHA loans, you're going to be knocking on doors that aren't even listed yet. Okay. And so, and there's other niches you can work too that, we can talk about another time. Please know you can always call me at 801-556-8000. Happy to help anytime, day or night. I was working with Larry a few weeks ago, helped Larry get through the tests, and I was just working with the lady this last week, and she's taking her test tomorrow, and we'll see how she does, but I think she'll be fine. So folks, help is there if you need it, and if you don't feel like you need it, that's fine, but if you do feel like you need it, Dan and I are here to help you and back you up 100%. You pick the best school in the state. We have extremely high passing rate, and we don't want you to screw it up. So thanks for being here tonight. And we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.